everybody. Welcome back to Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. I'm Josh Salina. We've missed you over the past 2 weeks, but we are back here on a Thursday. We'll be back next Thursday for our training camp preview, and then all the summer and all the talk is over. By the next Chiefs Live after that, we'll be in training camp in St. Joseph, Missouri. Of course, Chiefs Live will be coming with you every single day that there's a practice at training camp, giving you coverage you can't get anywhere else. This is a big week, though, in our return to live programming here on KCChiefs.com, as everybody's talking about it, the looming July 16th deadline with franchise player Dwayne Bowe. Did the Chiefs sign him to a long-term deal? Does he play under a one-year franchise tender? We'll discuss those possibilities and more with voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, coming up on this program. We'll also discuss a little bit of the supplemental draft. We'll continue our talk of the AFC West player ratings. We talked a lot about the offensive players and how the Chiefs stack up at each position offensively against that of their opponents inside the division. We'll look at the defense today in our player ratings, and we'll also have a special announcement. If you missed it around the 4th of July, there's an announcement that the Chiefs are moving their preseason broadcasts in-house. 65 TPT will produce these broadcasts. Trent Green will be back in the booth as your analyst.
Josh, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
Doing wonderful.
I lost a bet on you, the game. I bet that you were going to go yard, and you had a nice natural swing, but it looked like more of a line drive cut in the softball field.
Very disappointed in the fact that I couldn't get the ball up in the air.
It wasn't like wiffle ball. Did you hit two homers in the wiffle ball game a few years ago?
Yes, I did. I crushed the ball in the wiffle ball game. Unfortunately, the softball, it just comes in differently. I couldn't get under the thing. I was like, gosh.
No, it was a good natural swing. What was the whole experience like, man? You were playing left field next to Ricky Henderson before he moved over to third. You were hitting in the 3-hole, and behind you was George Brett. I imagine pretty awesome atmosphere to be part of.
It was unbelievable. I mean, to go in there, I didn't really know the list of guys that were all going to be there before I got there. But I walk in the locker room, and there's Ricky Henderson, Bo Jackson, Steve Harvey, Sweeney. You've got Winfield. You've got, all these guys that I grew up watching and were some of my childhood heroes. Joe Carter, for instance. I mean, it was just such an unbelievable experience to be around those guys and also get to interact with them, ask them questions, hear some stories. I mean, it was a fantastic night, and plus to be able to experience it. My older brother was there, and to experience it with him was pretty special as well.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know, your baseball background and really your families with Earthquake Kids and you in the Little League World Series and all that stuff. I mean, those guys that you were playing with, a lot of them were kind of doing their thing when you were a kid growing up. So it's one of those things where you probably idolized some of those guys, and then now you're on the same field as them.
Oh, there's no doubt. Also, to make that crossover, because I play a completely different sport, and a lot of times you interact with your peers and everything like that, but to be able to go back, because baseball was my first love, and to go back and see these guys who are, all of them, like I said, are Hall of Famers, to go and be able to be out in the field on the same team, interact with them, and see them in person was pretty special for me.
So you've got two brothers that made baseball their careers, and Jack was with you, is that right?
Right, my older brother Jack.
And how special is that? I mean, having him there, and where does he live? And just take me through the process of getting him to that game and why you guys chose to take it in together.
Well, Jack actually now lives up in San Francisco. He retired a few years back, and now that he's in San Francisco, he still runs a charity what the heck's the name of the charity? I'm going to the charity event tonight. I probably should know this, but anyway, I think it's called Going Green or something like that. And he teamed up with Major League Baseball. It was the first of its kind. It was kind of just bringing awareness to going green and recycling, doing all that stuff. So he still interacts with a lot of professional baseball players because of his charity that he works with. So he's coming out here with a function to be a part of that this weekend. It's actually tonight, and but at the same time, for him to come out, it was so cool and special for us to get to share it because the baseball community is such a tight knit community, and he was able to, through some form of connection, relate a story to this side or the other with Ricky Henderson and all these guys, and just to see him interact and talking and throwing stories around and people that they know, it was pretty special and pretty cool to see that.
Does he ever reflect with you on his big league career? I know he got called up for at least a brief time during his playing days.
Right, he was up with the Padres. 2 years he was called up with the Padres and then called up with the Astros as well. So he had some time, and he actually started some big league games. And I think his biggest accomplishment was his first victory when he was a starter in Major Leagues. And I want to say it was against the Astros, but if I'm completely wrong, that's totally fine.
So you hung out with the big leaguers. You got a big league brother there. Who surprised you the most that was a non-baseball player, maybe even an actor or a female? Who had the most skills? And Jenny Finch doesn't count since she's basically a pro baseball player.
Because she's awesome.
Yeah.
I think Eric Stonestreet was a guy I loved hanging out with. He's from Kansas City. He's the biggest Kansas City Chiefs fan, and he loves Kansas State too. So he's giving Coach Bill Self a hard time all night, but it was hilarious just to listen to him because he's so quick-witted and he's funny. And we had a great time hanging out all day. So that was a blast. The other part of the whole night that was pretty special, I thought, was the Wounded Warriors that were out there that were on both teams. And to pay tribute to them and allow them to come out and play and do all that, I thought it was pretty cool to be able to interact with them and also thank them for their service and what they've given up for us and their sacrifices that they made. So that was another cool part. But the other, I could go on and on, but we met with the Make-A-Wish Foundation there too, to go in and interact with all the Make-A-Wish kids. That's always something that's heavy on your heart when you get to go meet with children of different backgrounds and illnesses and stuff like that and try to make a difference in their life. And then also we dealt with Habitat for Humanity yesterday as well and went over there and showed our support for that because they built 9 homes that are all going to go up in Joplin. So the entire day was pretty magical just in terms of Habitat for Humanity, meeting with the kids from Make-A-Wish Foundation, and then from there also interacting with the 2 veterans that had lost their limbs in war, and then wrap all that up with all of my childhood heroes. It makes for a pretty good day.
Yeah, I'll bet the glove you were wearing, you made a nice snag at third and threw out Jenny Finch. Was that the glove from childhood, or did you have to go buy one?
No, those are gloves that I would have snagged it right off the bat. I had to knock it down. Those things are softball gloves. But the Jenny Finch ran one out on me earlier in the game. She was humming down that sideline, and I was playing third base. So I figured once I knocked that ball down, I was like, I'm not going to let her beat out another one. So I had to fling it at George Brett, and he was a little upset that I threw it so hard, but that's okay.
Are you going to the Derby tonight and the All-Star game with Jack as well?
We haven't decided about the home run derby tonight, but I'm planning on going to the All-Star game.
Nice. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. Sounded like a blast.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Thanks. No problem. I'll see you guys soon.
Matt had a great time at the All-Star festivities. I made it out to all 3 days. I had a great time at the All-Star festivities, but I'm happy that it's over now because there's nothing in between football season except, about 2 weeks or so. In fact, the Chiefs report to training camp 2 weeks from today. And, of course, Voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, is with us. You were amped about training camp. I'm amped about training camp. 2 short weeks is all we got before football start to fly for real, Mitch.
It's going to be exciting. It'll be one of the best camps in recent years because, and people can follow us every day, there's position battles going on. I'll be honest with this, instead of trying to fill out a 53-man roster, there's going to be some good guys that have to make decisions on. And we can go through position by position, but there will be battles at every spot, and that's going to make St. Joe a fun time. That and the Arizona Cardinals are coming in. They're going to work out with the team prior to that preseason game here at Arrowhead, and that will bring a little bit of spark to it, plus a night practice, family fun night, be a good year to go to St. Joe.
Decisions. They'll have plenty at training camp, but they also have one coming up before training camp on Monday is July 16th, the date everyone in Kansas City has been talking about, and really I should say Mitch sweating about what happens with Dwayne Bowe. Remains unsigned as the Chiefs franchise player. Here's what that July 16th deadline means for Bowe. If he doesn't sign by the end of the day, maybe 3 or 4 p.m., whatever the actual deadline is, Mitch, on the 16th, it will mean he'll earn $9.5 million on a one-year franchise tender deal in 2012. He would have to sign that deal, of course. You could have a holdout, possibly. Most people think he would play under that. So it's the question of, does he play for the 1 year in the tender deal, or do the Chiefs sign him long-term before this? If he doesn't, here's what happens if he doesn't sign that deal, Mitch, for the Chiefs. They face the possibility, obviously, of letting Bowe hit free agency in 2013 or franchising him amount of $11.4 million. That's, you take that plus the 9, I mean, you're committing $20 million guaranteed to Dwayne Bowe over 2 seasons if you franchise him again in 2013, 120% of his $9.5 million contract. The cap hit is finalized if he's not signed by the 16th, which basically means it shuts down. The $9.5 million goes against the cap, and you can't sign Dwayne Bowe long-term, can't even discuss it. It's illegal to discuss it until after the final game of the regular season. So really the 16th comes along, and that's it. It's either he's signed, he's not. Now, Mitch, here's what I think is interesting. It feels like we're in a bubble here in Kansas City, and it's like, what is going to happen with Dwayne Bowe? What in the world is going on with Dwayne? Only 7 of the 21 franchise players have signed, so you're looking at half the NFL cities are going through exactly what the Chiefs are going through, their fan base. Is their franchise player going to sign a long-term deal or not? These deals always get done, if they get done, right around the deadline. We're going to see a flurry of activity. I would probably think maybe over the weekend we'll hear some rumors around the NFL, maybe Kansas City as well. But Monday's when you're really going to see everything. Nothing sparks a deal like a deadline. So in Kansas City, the feeling isn't just us. It's half the NFL cities are all debating the same thing we are here in Kansas City.
Go to New Orleans for a day.
Drew Brees is their franchise player.
Right. So it's really hot in New Orleans, but it's hot here in Kansas City as well. To me, when you show the graphic, the full page, if you will, of how the collective bargaining agreement now handles this, to me, the key item is the bottom line. That is the fact that you can't do a long-term deal until after the 2012 season. Let's go back and look at recent years. One thing Scott Pioli has been able to do, and we talk about it a lot on this show and other shows, is the fact that he kept the guys that he and Romeo wanted for a long period of time, but many of those were done during the season. If you go back and look at recent history with Derek Johnson or Jamal Charles, under this rule, or the new rules in effect, that can't be done. So it's either play 1 year by July the 16th, signing the tender, or try to do a long-term deal with Dwayne Bowe here in the next 3 or 4 days. So to me, that's what's intriguing about it. But it also, if Dwayne performs at a high level this year, let's say signs the tender, performs at a high level, then you have another year to evaluate him, and yes, you work on a long-term deal at the end of this season, or you franchise him again. It's not doomsday like Chiefs fans are on the edge of the cliff with their car like Thelma and Louise. It might be that way in New Orleans, but not in Kansas City necessarily. But the point to be made is I think this is all going to work out, at least on the short term, and I think it'll work out very soon.
Yeah, you know, the thing that you look, Mitch, roughly 60% of franchise players end up signing under the 1 year deal. A lot of people think that the deals get done. Actually, no, more players end up playing under the 1 year deal. In 2010, 4 of the 6 franchise players stayed at their 1 year offer. One of those 2 guys who didn't, I guess never mind, I'm thinking the wrong year. It would have been 2011, would have been Tamba Hali. And he was one of the guys who signed a long-term deal as soon as the lockout lifted last year. And then in 2009, 7 of the 12 franchise players played under that 1 year deal. So a lot of people think that most guys end up signing long-term. It's actually the other way. The majority of players play under that 1 year deal. The one thing that you have to keep in mind for the future, and really if you look at tagging a guy for a second straight year, is the Chiefs could do. I mean, there's no way if the Chiefs want him there, Dwayne Bowe will play in 2013 in Kansas City because he'd spend a lot of money, but you can do it. But the one thing about that is it eats up cap space, it eats up your guaranteed money, and who are starters that also are scheduled to become free agents? 2013, Brandon Albert is on that list. Glenn Dorsey is on that list. So it's all things in the big piece of this big pie that you have to take into account. And maybe Albert or Dorsey get an extension like we saw Charles, like we saw Johnson get in season, like we saw Flowers get in season. And maybe they don't. It's all kind of goes in this big pie, and it's something to consider.
Well, it's the parenthetical discussion, and maybe it's not that parenthetical because if you look at the, because we showed on the graphic, the guaranteed contract, guaranteed salary that Bo will get if he signs the tender. Let's look at also what the Chiefs have been able to do in recent seasons. They've had room under the cap to be able to sign a Kyle Orton, let's say last year during the middle of the season. It's something that Scott Pioli likes to have in his back pocket because throughout the course of 17 weeks, a lot of things happen. And many times in that last month, let's say you're going for a division title, there is a chance perhaps to sign somebody like that that can put you over the top. Well, that cap number is that cap number. I think fans, and I've noticed this a lot, because we went through an uncapped year, people have the cap used to get talked about a lot. Right. But they don't talk about it much anymore. But guess what, folks? Talk about it, because it's that salary plus the paragraph 5, what you amortize over a guaranteed contract or signing bonus, and you've got to look at that cap figure. Well, the cap figure for Dwayne Bowe in this instance, if he signs the tender of the one-year franchise deal, will be that solid $9.5 million. It could be something different if you did a long-term deal based on how much the bonus would be and how much the salary would be.
Now you don't know who's going to get a long-term deal, who will sign the extension, where the Chiefs are. Right now, the Chiefs are in pretty good salary cap position. But keep this in mind for teams like New Orleans. They're like, okay, we'll franchise Drew this year. We'll franchise him again next year. If that's the model, you go 2 year in a row franchise tag. Over half the teams in the league right now, Mitch, have less than $7 million of cap space remaining. It's not going to be as easy to franchise guys as we move forward throughout this process. And once you have to hit the 90%, all those things, the economics of the new CBA haven't really taken effect, and we're just starting to see them happen, and next year they're really going to start to happen. So it's all things to consider with Dwayne Bowe.
Well, and into that enters the Broncos' Peyton Manning decision.
Yep.
Okay, let's be honest about that, because there's some cap issues with what they did with Peyton. But every one of these deals down the line, you've got to, the salary cap's back, folks, and it's a big part of what general managers have to think through.
So in closing, with Dwayne Bowe, did Mitch and I have any inside scoop? No, it's been very quiet on this front, and I like that about this. To me, it shows that they're probably talking, because if the organization hasn't said anything, and that's been the Chiefs' policy, but an agent hasn't come out and made some headlines with something, that usually means he's not mad about something. Usually when an agent comes out and speaks, well, the Chiefs and us aren't talking, it's because they want that out there. There's something going. I think silence is good, and we'll see. We're at the countdown. We're going to find out sooner or later, so we'll see what the future holds for Dwayne Bowe in Kansas City, both short and long term. There's another draft coming up, Mitch. The supplemental draft is today. There's really one player that is of interest around the league. Probably only one player has a chance of getting picked. It's Baylor wide receiver Josh Gordon, and Gordon's had he's got the freakish ability. Has had multiple off-field incidents, some on-field incidents, and one of the reasons he's in the supplemental draft. The Chiefs were at his workout reportedly, as I don't think that's a shock. They're probably at everybody's pro day that's in the supplemental draft. A lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of buzz, but some people ask, do you see the Chiefs picking up this guy? I say no for a few reasons, Mitch. Number one, the Chiefs have a lot of receivers right now. Number two, the Chiefs just off sheer trend haven't used a supplemental draft pick since Darren Mickle in '92. So you're looking at 20 years of no supplemental draft picks. So I would say that's a reaning. And also I think
Darren Mickle's not exactly on the Ring of Honor. But that's
second round they used for him in there. Yeah. And they say if Morgan is picked, Josh Gordon is picked, there's some teams that would have a possible high interest that need a receiver still. Teams like Cleveland, teams like Miami with the Colts, the Bills, the Cowboys. I just think there's more teams on the list, even if the Chiefs went to put in like a late round bid, that I think Gordon would go to someone higher. So the supplemental draft's coming and going. I don't see much ripples here in Kansas City.
I think the discussion about Gordon is accentuated with the fact that we saw the receivers, and I'm curious how it'll translate to St. Joe. They had a good spring for the most part. Jonathan Baldwin had a very good spring. We saw what maybe Devon Wiley can do if he's healthy. Breston worked hard this spring, and we know that he can be precise. This receiving core, I thought, showed a lot. To me, it might be the most critical position on the football team for the offense to explode. If Charles comes back, we know what Hillis can do to make it more versatile, Kevin Boss. But if the receiving core jumps up, then all of a sudden you have a chance to be really good on offense, better than people think. But we saw that trending, kind of tracking that during the spring, and that may lead to that the Josh Gordon discussion.
Bo, Preston, Baldwin, Wiley. Let's take Dexter McCluster and not put him right here at number 5 and just kind of put him over here and have him as, is he a running back, is he a receiver? He's going to be on this team, but let's just put him outside that category. We haven't talked about, then there's 4 guys plus McCluster. We haven't even brought in the discussion Terrence Copper, who's been a reserve for the past 3 years here. That's one of the most active special teams players. We haven't talked about Jeremy Horn, who's another active special teams guy. How about a draft pick, Junior Hemingway? Is he going to make this team? Adding a whole
Josh Bellamy was good at times in free
who was
agency.
possibly the most talked about rookie free agent throughout OTAs and the mini camps. So, yeah, you look at the receiver. This is a stacked group, assuming Bo is in there at the number 1 slot, and the best group we've seen as a whole in quite some time here in Kansas City, Mitch.
But again, I just saw improvement throughout the spring, and with Brian Dable spending a lot of time with that group, along with Nick Sirianni, there seemed to be a lot of emphasis put on something that we've talked about here, and that's being precise, the route running, not just the big plays, the one-handed grab by Jonathan Baldwin against Stanford route, which was the play of the offseason. It was just taking things to another level. That makes it better for Matt Castle. But there was a lot of positive signs of that wide receiving core. And again, does that continue to track in St. Joe when you put pads on and start to crack it up a little bit? But there's a lot of optimism about this receiving core.
Mitch, let's talk defense and continue with our AFC West player rankings. We did the offense and had a great discussion on where I got a little bit of heat on here, where I said, oh, Hillis might outrush Charles this year. Did you notice I say might? I'm kind of backing off of it a little bit. And everyone's like, you're wrong. No way. That's just a stupid comment. And then we had some great debate about Matt Castle, where he ranks among the AFC West quarterbacks. Well, let's look at the defensive side of the football, where the Chiefs, by many, are predicted to be a top 10 defense this year heading into the season. And it starts with this team's linebacking core. And, of course, you look at the Chiefs linebackers, and 3 of the top 5 in ESPN's AFC West rankings are Kansas City Chiefs. Number 1, Tamba Hali. Number 3, Derek Johnson. There's your pair of Pro Bowlers. And number 5, coming in last year's Mackley Hill Rookie of the Year winner here in Kansas City, Justin Houston. Can't argue much with that. You've got Belcher and Sally, your thumper type guys, coming in later in the list. Without question, Mitch, this linebacking core for the Kansas City Chiefs is the most talented in the AFC West.
People ask me all the time, who's ready to bust out? Who don't we know about? Well, the people know about Justin Houston, but I think he's on the cusp, Josh, of taking off and putting himself in the top 4 here really quickly in there, because what he can do, and I saw him this spring too start to flourish in the fact of not just being able to rush the passer, but in coverage. We talked about how difficult it is to play the position that he plays. He's athletic enough, he's got enough football instinct to show that he can be more comprehensive there at that spot. Tamba, of course, people look at the sacks and the pass rushing ability, but he also has kind of learned the nuances more of when they play the base and playing the outside linebacker. Von Miller can play. I mean, Von Miller's outstanding. I've loved him ever since he was at A&M, obviously, but he deserves to be right there. Derek Johnson, you probably could break this down to outside-inside. And it's where the line gets blurry between outside linebackers and a 3-4 and a defensive end and a 4-3, because Dumerville and Hali, to me, seem to be in the same discussion. But if you go to inside linebackers and differentiate between ILBs and outside linebackers, Derek Johnson is numero 1 on that list. The other guy on that list in the division that I think will have an impact, and people haven't talked about him much, is Jarrett Johnson in San Diego.
I like Jarrett Johnson.
He can play, and we've seen him when we've had to play the Ravens. He's underrated because he's flying under the Terrell Suggs radar and the Ray Lewis radar when he was in Baltimore. But I think he will help San Diego a great deal. This is a great division for linebackers.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised. I'm high on Justin Houston. I love the guy. I loved him as a draft pick and all through last season. I'm actually a bit pleasantly surprised that he comes in at number 5, and the reason being, he didn't get the sacks till late in the year last season, and what he finished with 8 or 6, somewhere in that, and that's good, and people see him as a rising star. But what I really like about Justin Houston, Mitch, I'll go back to that Denver Broncos game when they brought him in on the edge. He slow plays Tim Tebow. Tebow doesn't know what to do with the football, ends up pitching it. Then he goes off that pitch and makes a tackle behind the line of scrimmage. He is developing not only as a pass rusher, Mitch, but a more complete player. Justin still has some issues in coverage where maybe he gets his head turned around, but against the run, and he's even improving that with his pass drops. But it's not just pass rush with him, Mitch. Against the run, this guy is a player to be reckoned with. He can walk up on the line and kind of play in that 9 technique and chuck a tight end at the line of scrimmage. He can play off, and he can flow to the football, backside coverage, the pursuit angles, play in space as he showed against Tebow and the Broncos. I really like him more than just a pass rusher, which is really what he's billed as.
Well, first of all, he's a superb athlete. He has instinct, but now he's learning the game. And that 3-4 outside linebacker position takes a lot of learning. But as I mentioned, I just think he's on the verge of really breaking through.
And the question for the Chiefs, who plays behind them? That's probably going to be part of one of your finding the 53s. I like the competition behind them. You've got some draft picks and a guy who's played a while here in Kansas City, Andy Studebaker, Cam Sheffield, and Gabe Miller, all probably trying to compete for what will be 2 spots behind Houston and Hali. Even though this linebacking core, you probably have your starter set with maybe the wild card is Brandon Seiler and how does he come in off the Achilles. There's still some good competition, even though the Chiefs haven't brought in any new players at that spot. It's the same faces. They've got a good squad, but I do think it's something to watch in camp with the competition in that group as well.
Well, I'm throwing Corey Greenwood, who's turned into a great special teams player, and it becomes a mathematical question too. I mean, I'm not trying to, we're jumping ahead of what you're going to see from St. Joe, but do you keep 8, do you keep 9? I mentioned before, in that inside linebacker position, you love to have 3 for 2 spots. So who can play that will backer behind Derek Johnson? That becomes key too. Can Belcher move over there and Seiler move into the mic if they need to do that? It's mathematics, but again, it's much like the wide receiver position, and even better than that in the fact that you have seen guys improve in their career. You've seen Justin Houston move on the upside. You've seen Belcher do that throughout his career. You mentioned Seiler's a wild card, but I remember when San Diego, I respected him a great deal. But Greenwood has been better. Studebaker's been better. These guys are all moving forward in their careers. It's just getting crowded at the linebacker spot. You mentioned Gabe Miller. He's going to have to work really, really hard in this camp because this is going to be a tough cut.
If you like training camp battles, you will like. That's our preview of Finding the 53. Mitch will break it down for you in a special video. Most every day of training camp, Finding the 53 will focus on the things he just talked about. Some of them are starting jobs, but a lot of rounding out this roster and who's going to be a primary backup, who's going to be your swing tackle. You can go up and down the Chiefs roster, and there's competition all over the place. That's the name of the game this preseason. Competition, increased depth, intensity, and Mitch's Finding the 53 will address the camp battles going on in St. Joe. It's a must-watch once camp starts on KCChiefs.com. Mitch, let's move to the defensive line and the rankings by ESPN. The Chiefs put 3 in the top 10, though obviously not as high as the linebackers. Dorsey coming in at 5, Jackson coming in at 7. That's probably about what I expected. Both these guys stout against the run, get criticized a bit for themselves in pass rush. Rather, the debate can go on and on whether that's fair or not. And the 3-4, we'll save that for another day. But you look at this list, Mitch, with Dorsey and Jackson, and then Dontari Poe, before he's even put on a pad, comes in at number 10. He hasn't put on a pad yet. And Bailey, who there's at 23. I think I know what you're going to say about him, that he's a rising star on your list, and he is far underrated. But what do you think about the top 10 there?
Well, this division is loaded at linebacker. It is not loaded on the defensive line. Oakland has the most underrated front 7 in the National Football League, and Oakland's going to go, they're in a whole paradigm shift. They're similar to what the Chiefs went through in 9, basically, because you've got a brand new front office, a new coach. But Seymour is just a beast. He's so hard to block. When he and Tommy Kelly decide to get after it, we have seen it for Kansas City. It is hard to win the line of scrimmage with those guys. In Dumerville's case, he came back from injury great last year, knew he would, but he looks like Tama to me, and that's where the line gets a little blurry between linebackers. You know, Dumerville's an outside, you mentioned a 9-tech guy, kind of put his hand on the ground, come from the outside. I don't care if you're in a 2-point stance or 3-point stance. I don't really compare Elvis with this page. I compare him with the previous page. In the case of Dorsey and Jackson, there's a lot of discussion in the Chiefs' kingdom about those guys, but we know that they've got to work the tough shift, man. They're working the 3 to 11 or the grave night shift. graveyard shift, overnight shift, because they've got to play that two-gap scheme. That's different than what Oakland does with Tommy Kelly or Seymour when they want to get a one-gap and up the field. But it's hard to disagree with this. And yes, I'm going to put Alan Bailey on that and blink him if I could.
Put him at like 15 or something, right?
Sure, and they could be even higher than that. Now, he's going to be a specialty type player. He'll be used in sub downs, but watch out for Alan Bailey. I think he could have a breakthrough year as well.
I agree with you on that list. I think without question, Oakland has the most talented defensive line in this division, maybe in all of football, or they're right up there in that discussion. They're a force to be reckoned with. How does that come in the whole shift in coaching, the shift at the front office? That remains to be seen. But on paper, when you look at it, Oakland's front seven, that's going to keep them in this division. And we've talked all offseason, how do you see the AFC West fixing up? I'm not as high on San Diego. I know you're not as high on San Diego. But when it comes to Denver, Oakland, Kansas City, argument can be made for any of those three teams to be the outright division winner. And then you take the national media and bring them into the case. They're pretty high on San Diego still as well because of Phillip Rivers. This is a wide open AFC West. But when you have a defensive line like the Oakland Raiders, Mitch, that immediately puts you in the running to win the AFC West. So that is a stout defensive line.
It is. Now, I mentioned their front seven being the most underrated in the NFL, and I agree with you, but they lose Cameron Wembley. That's going to affect them a little bit, the kid from Wichita Northwest. And they've got issues with Rolando McClain in the middle, at the Mike Backer in that 4-3. So those are things they've got to deal with in that front seven. So everybody's kind of got their issues, everybody's got their strengths. You still got to put San Diego in the discussion. You could stand in front of the Supreme Court and make an argument for all four teams to win the division.
Of course, the guys will tell you that playing on that second line, you're only as good as the guys playing in front of you, and you can look a lot better if you've got elite guys playing in front of you. And whoever goes in for Oakland in those spots, if you've got the defensive line that they do, sometimes you play a little bit higher than your actual ability that you've shown. The AFC West defensive backfield, the Chiefs end up getting 3 players in the top 6. Champ Bailey, number 1 for Denver, Mitch. I think that's your Ray Lewis, your Hall of Famer. Put him 1 until someone supplants him. I'd argue that he's no longer the number 1 defensive back in this division, but until someone takes the King's crown, you got to put him at number 1. Brandon Flowers is next in line at number 2 for the Chiefs. Eric Weddle of San Diego, a guy I like a lot, comes in at 3 for San Diego. Then, Brandon Flowers at 4. Eric Berry was actually at 2 on that list. Tyvon Burns of Oakland and Stanford Route. Stanford Route's the interesting one to me, Mitch. Flowers, we know what he can do. He's going to be your primary corner. Eric Berry, with the injury coming back, he looks good. He looks like he's going to be able to play to a high level. We know what he can do. Stanford Route is the question mark because for the first time in Brandon Flowers' career, we're seeing all these picks. Guess who's on the field for every single one of those picks, Mitch? Who experienced it with him? Brandon Carr.
Brandon Carr. Yeah.
Brandon Flowers has not started an NFL game. He's played in 16. He started 59. He has not started an NFL game without Brandon Carr starting on the other side. They came in the same draft. Carr started every game from 2008 to 2012. So he and Stanford Route worked on their on-field chemistry a lot throughout this offseason. Now, what's on-field chemistry mean for cornerbacks, yes? Because they're opposite sides of the field. They're not playing next to one another. It's not like offensive linemen. It's not like receivers and quarterbacks, but it's what happens when you go off the field. You talk about this player ran this on me, or I'm chucking John Baldwin, and he's not getting off the line. So why don't you step up, Brandon, and chuck him, and then he's not going to be able to go deep. That's the on-field chemistry you get in cornerbacks because they see both sides. Receivers flip sides of the field. They see different looks, and that's really what Brandon and Stanford have worked on, and I'm interested to see how Stanford can step in and if he can be the 2010 version of himself that played opposite an elite cornerback in Nnamdi Asomugha.
Yeah, that's the question because last year he had to move to the left corner position. These highlights are him playing left corner, and he had to when Asomugha left to go to the Eagles. Now he moves back to the right corner position, and I remember when we played him and prepping for him, Stanford Route was a good right corner. Left corner is a whole different animal with mostly right-handed quarterbacks. And so the fact that he does not have to play that left corner position, I think, has put Stanford Route in a pretty good position, in and of himself. He knows what he can and cannot do. And then Romeo Crennel likes to play a lot of combo coverages. So the fact of being on the same page, you mentioned, if your man, how are you going to play it? And then, of course, guys rolling in with the sub packages, who's going to play nickel, who's going to play dime. Eric Berry, I think, is ready to take over Polamalu's spot as the best safety in the league. Eric Weddle gets a lot of discussion. I get all that. Eric Berry could be on another planet. And I think that people ask, is he ready to go? Is he ready to go? He's over ready to go. That little video piece right there just tells you all you need to know about him.
He's ready to go, exactly.
And the fact that I think he'll be better than his rookie year, even against the pass. It was shown here on a blitz. But there were some areas he needed to improve on in his rookie season when he played in coverage. I think he's going to be there this year. But you're putting again impact, explosive guys at different spots on this defensive unit.
Specific to Stanford Route too, Mitch, it's going to be interesting in training camp and in the preseason because the microscope will be on him because he's replacing a guy who developed into a longtime starter here in Carr, a guy who got $50.1 million on the open market. The Chiefs' most notable free agent departure was Brandon Carr. So Stanford Route is your starting corner. There's not that's not for discussion. It's going to be Flowers and Route. So everyone's going to be blowing up out of proportion the times he gets burned this preseason. Likewise, if he has a huge preseason and gets a lot of picks, that performance will likely be embellished and blown up. The spotlight's going to be on him, and I'm not necessarily concerned about a big play or two in the preseason, or either way, good or bad. I'm looking day to day on that practice field, working with Flowers and being ready to go for the long haul. He's going to have to block that out of his mind because he's going to be under review for everything he does this preseason by fans and by media.
Well, it's not going to be any worse than a year ago. I'm going to tell you, and I've had a couple conversations with him. He's a really bright guy, tough guy, and I talk a lot about security versus insecurity. Stanford Route's pretty secure in who he is as a player. It won't be any worse than last year. He really was in that spot last year when they lost Asamoah. And now you're asking him to play a whole different position, essentially, or a part on the field, which was a whole different in the tier of importance. So I think it's almost time where he kind of feels he can relax a little bit and get back to what he can do best.
You talk about guys playing on an island. Stanford Route, it means that in more ways than one the last 2 years in this league for him. Mitch, 2 weeks until training camp. Next week we'll have our training camp preview show, and then, of course, he'll be in St. Joe by the time we come live. We'll have videos, we'll have articles, we'll have exclusive practice footage you can't find anywhere else from our 65 TPT team of producers. It's going to be an awesome training camp, and Mitch is going to get even more awesome because preseason games are moving in-house. 65 TPT is taking over. When we come back, we're going to tell our fans how they can be part of the broadcast and be part of this 65 TPT team. It's almost here, Mitch. Let's take a break and tell you what, it'll be an exciting training camp.
I really love the sports lab. It's really fun.
I burned a lot of energy in a fun way, and I really learned a lot.
Have you heard of the Chief Sports Lab powered by Blue KC? To learn more, click on the banner to the right of this video.
I pull up to the game and all I smell is barbecue. I see everybody with their jerseys on, just out tailgating. Everybody's yelling, honking their horns in their cars, offering me barbecue on the way before the game. I mean, everybody's just friendly. I mean, it's just a wonderful city to play football in, man. Our fans are good in the stadium and out of the stadium. They just treat everybody with respect, and you gotta love that. This city is built like a family. This is a great place to be, and I love it.
Welcome back to Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. Josh Looney alongside Rob Alberina, the Buddha of all things media marketing here with the Kansas City Chiefs. Rob, I teased our viewers earlier in the show about preseason games moving in-house, and I didn't exactly tell them what that means, just that 65 TPT was taking over our preseason broadcast of our 4 exhibition games. And why don't you tell us exactly what that entails?
It actually entails a lot of good things. The key to bringing preseason games in-house for us is now, like our shows, Hy-Vee Chiefs Insider, which you're a huge part of, Chiefs Kingdom, which we rolled out some pilots of last year, and Red and Gold, which people see every month here on KCChiefs.com. Now the games themselves will also have that bar of excellence that we feel we set with those shows, especially with Hy-Vee Chiefs Insider. Of course, Kingdom's going to air locally. 17 episodes this year, also on KCChiefs.com. Everything we do will also air on KCChiefs.com. But we are really stepping up our game. We now have 2 years ago we had one show. We are now going to have 3. 2 that are going to be on broadcast, and 1 red and gold, which will remain on the site. But now we're going to go into the live broadcast world. And basically, we're going to take that level of broadcasting and we're going to put it into 3 hours of a game. So our hope, Josh, frankly, is that the viewers out there and the fans, they see no difference between a network game and what we're going to put on for our preseason games. Our preseason games are unbelievably important, and there's actually some pretty crazy stats. I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to stats, and I like to use them. But the fact of the matter is, like a game in Kansas City, for instance, let's pick any game, week 1, week 2, week 3 in the regular season. Those games garner like a 33 or a 34 rating. Our preseason games do almost the same exact numbers. The numbers are ridiculous. So the people are watching, the footprint is massive. We're talking about, 7 states that these things are going to. And those games are also going to be rebroadcast on the NFL Network. And the NFL Network touches about 160 million homes. The preseason game against Green Bay, for instance, Josh, that game will be simulcast live to 160 million homes while we're putting on the broadcast in the Kingdom's footprint. So it's a huge undertaking, much like we've taken over the stadium, much like we've taken over the shows. We are now taking over our preseason games. Of course, Trent Green and Paul Burmeister are going to be calling the games. Some handsome guy named Josh Looney is going to be on the sidelines. And so, we feel like we have a recipe for success. This is something I've done in my past life, and we're bringing it here. But there's more to it.
There's more. Let me butt in for 1 second.
Go.
I know the viewers will say, oh, that's all good and great. We're pumped. We love 65 TPT and what you guys do. How's it going to affect me? Well, it's not. You'll get the same footprint. If you were getting Chiefs preseason games in the past, you'll continue to get them. Our broadcast partners are the same. In Kansas City, you'll see the games on CBS, KCTV5. If you're in Wichita, you're going to see the station you've seen in Wichita.
That's
same
right.
thing if you're in Joplin, if you're in Topeka. So the footprint's the same. The network
Actually,
structure,
we've actually expanded the footprint too.
So it's even bigger.
By 50%. We're going to 5 other stations, and I don't exactly know what those footprints are. Contracts are being signed, but we're hoping to stretch as far as potentially Oak City. Certainly, Joplin is 100% locked in now. There were some questions about that. So that ring is resonating even farther for the Kingdom.
All right, so it will affect your viewing experience, but not if you actually get the games or not. So that's more good news for this. All right,
That's
so
right.
give us the tease here. I told our fans that there's a way that they can be part of this and not just come in and hang out with our crew, but actually, be part of the broadcast, be on camera, be on television, part of one of these preseason games.
How about a serious part?
A serious
a serious part. Here's the scoop. I've got a little cheat sheet here. Our production manager, Dana Witt, made sure that I have this so I get it straight, because this does not come out until next week. We're running a contest. The contest is called Rock the Mic. It starts July 16th, and it runs through August 15th. And very simply, we want you, a fan, a viewer, a budding journalist, somebody who, an on-camera talent, we want you to be part of the broadcast. And very simply, what that means is we're looking for a sideline reporter, basically someone to kick you out of your job.
That's right. Find my replacement. That's
our goal.
If you do a good enough job, they might keep you on. Who knows?
Right. So what's going to happen is Josh is going to lead the charge for the Chiefs for the first 3.5 games.
All right.
We are looking for a sideline reporter for the 4th game. We would like to travel that person to beautiful Green Bay, to Lambeau Stadium with us. And you will work with the production team. You will work with Paul. You will work with Trent. You will work with me. And we are going.
You work with me.
You get to, and really,
Unfortunately.
the amazing thing is our games, which I want to add to. I'm going to get back to this for a second, but our games are also being directed by Andy Goldberg, who is a CBS stud. and Ryan Galvin, who's a producer for ESPN. Those are the guys who are going to be commanding this game in the truck. So this person who comes in will sign up at KCChiefs50.com and check on the Rock the Mic tab. It's very easy. I've seen it. I've done it. You create a link. Go get your cell phone. Go get your mom's video camera. Go get your sister's video camera. Go get whatever it is you have and do a legit. Well, it doesn't have to be legit, but if you want to be considered, give us a legit sideline report. Make it up to a minute. In my eyes, I can tell whether or not in 15 to 30, 45 seconds whether you're worth your salt. We're going to sit down here. Our team of Emmy Award-winning producers is going to sit down. We're going to look at every one of these entrants, and we expect to get a lot of them. And they can be from anywhere, coast to coast, Maine to California, Kansas City. It doesn't make a difference. We're looking for somebody who's a Chiefs fan, who wants an opportunity to be on the sidelines. And honestly, I'm telling you out there, in front of 160+ million people. That's a fact.
That's right. It's going to be the Green Bay game, so you're going to be the sideline report for the second half of a game that is going to be aired live on NFL Network.
No one else is doing this. This is going to be pretty ridiculous.
You're on NFL Network. You're live on a national simulcast.
And also in our footprint, because you said it right, the simulcast. So the goal is to get folks to the rules will all be there starting on Monday. So if you have a friend or a relative, or if you go to KUMU, UMKC, I don't care where you go. If you are studying journalism and you want an opportunity to be on television, I'm going to give you that opportunity. And I'm going to give you that opportunity in a massive, massive way. And our goal is to potentially find somebody who could be a part of our crew in the future. The goal is to really find somebody who's spectacular, who wants to do this, and we are going to have some unbelievable entrants. There's going to be some great entrants. I'm going to tell you, there's going to be some funny entrants too.
And we're probably going to
one only needs
some fun with those. Maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, you have
absolutely.
fun with me when I screw up,
we're going to have a blooper reel. You only have to be a fan of American Idol to know that there's tremendous talent out there, and then there are some folks out there that potentially might want to think about another position. But we can't wait. And so check it out. It's Rock the Mic. It's on KCChiefs50.com. We're looking for some great entrants. It's really going to, if you go now, it won't be there. Again, Monday it begins. And, I can imagine you might be getting some emails or tweets and things, but we'll tweet all this out. We'll make a big deal of this, and this will also be on the site for everyone to see.
Yeah, it's on the site beginning on Monday. We wanted to talk about on Chiefs Live, and for those of you that come to KCChiefs.com religiously, to give you time, go ahead and get it done this weekend before camp starts. We're going to be flooded with these things, and once training camp starts, our lives get way busier. So get it in early, get it in at the start. Use this time as a head start. Get your video perfect and send it to us when things open up on Monday and next week. And you have a month-long time to submit it. But I would encourage you to get it in early because things are less hectic, and you probably have a better shot if you get it in early.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think the biggest question people are going to ask, going to say, hey, Josh, what should I report on? Report on anything. Report on Jamal, Barry, and Moyaki, coming back. Report on the free agents that we picked up. Report on the weather. We're not worried about the content. What we really want to see is how you look on camera, how you feel on camera. Is it your friend? Can you interact with that audience? That's really what we're looking for.
Yeah, and also test your Chiefs knowledge a bit. That's why don't send us your demo reel of other things. We want it Chiefs related. Right. So you've seen football games, you've seen sideline reports. Yeah, give us a fake injury update. Give us a fake weather report or something that just happened. That way we know you're a Chiefs fan, we know you're Chiefs specific, and you can get on here.
Think Michelle Tafoya or the Goose. You can go either way. A lot of wiggle room there. A lot of wiggle room. So give us your best shot.
KCChiefs50.com. That's just another one of the things we're doing for our 50 years in Kansas City celebration. We will be rolling out all sorts of things throughout the 2012 football season. We already have, from the free jerseys to the sideline opportunity. There's tons of things that I'm not even discussing. It's going to be a great season in Kansas City, and we want to thank everybody for their entries in advance.
Absolutely.
They're going to be a lot of fun to watch on both ends, the talent and the and the
I can't
movements.
wait. It's going to be great stuff. We're working until 11, 12 at night, and all the producers that you don't see behind this camera, they're going to be looking at all this stuff. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see plenty of you that submitted training camp. But actually, yeah, come in and start bribing us when you see us at camp. Maybe that'll help your cause as well. Thanks for joining us on Chiefs Live, everybody. We'll be back next week with our training camp preview, and then it's on to St. Joseph, Missouri. It's about to get real for the 2012 Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see you next time.